So, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim. So, I'll start very briefly with the recitation of the Holy Quran. The nice recitation, very short one, about a minute and a little over.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Okay, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. Alhamdulillah. So we are going to start. It's already being recorded. So those who want to listen back again can do so, inshallah. So Quaid-e-Azam, very briefly, I'm going to talk about the basics and then hand it over to Capt Hadi Rizvi, who will generally give you a detailed talk on him. And about education, Quaid-e-Azam said in 1876, without education, it is complete darkness. Without education, it is complete darkness. And with education, it is light. Education is a matter of life. This was what he said. Now, let me now briefly introduce Captain Hadi. He joined PAF in early 60s, and he was a fighter pilot, flew almost most of the fighter aircraft at that time, participated in 65 and 71 wars, commanded fighter squadrons, 26 squadron, and of course, total time he spent is almost 24 years, 2.5 decades, and he left Pakistan Air Force voluntarily, retired, and joined the commercial aviation segment. He worked with PIA for many years, and then he was there as a chief flying instructor also. And of course, his entire life is connected with aviation. But he's also done his master's in English. He's a prolific writer, poet, and an author. He also makes very interesting, I would say, puzzles which were published in various magazines and newspapers, both nationally and internationally. He's won international awards. He's written a book called Space, which was awarded in the United States as one of the appreciated documents that he had put forth. In fact, de facto, his passion and his, I would say, complete devotion is on a person that we are going to talk about, Quaid-e-Azam. And I call him that he's de facto an authority on Quaid-e-Azam. So with that, Before I do that, I think there are a number of qualities of Quaid-e-Azam, and here is one. And this is very interesting to note for all of us who are related with aviation, that of all the countries of the world, Quaid-e-Azam is the only founder leader who had the national airline established before the country was born. No other country has its airline established before it is born. So look at the vision of this great leader. With that, I think, yeah, one more thing. In 1946, how did he do that? He asked Adamji Group and the Isfahanis to establish the Orient Airways, which later on turned out to be, in 1955, merged with PIA and became Pakistan International Airlines. So the overview of this webinar on Qaid is going to be a brief introduction about Qaid, some statements of his opponents, Jinnah as others saw him, and some quotes by Qaid, and the ode to the Quaid-e-Azam, and then of course question and answers. And with that, I would hand over the mic to Captain Hadi Rizvi. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Personally, I feel that there is one man, if we really follow him, this nation is going to be a great nation. And this is exactly what he had said it many times. We have all the talent, we have all the resources. In fact, most of it goes away because we shun talented people and indulge in what he termed as the greatest sort of, ill of any nation, and that was nepotism and bribery.
Just one moment. Can everybody see the screen on Quaid-e-Azam?
No, sir.
No, you cannot. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Somehow it bumped off. Let me put it back
Can
on.
they hear it?
Yeah, you can hear me. Of course, you responded back, so you definitely can hear me.
Now, sir, it's visible.
Now it's visible. Okay. All right. Haven't missed much.
Okay, folks, we just
So,
started off,
Uh,
and
yes, this is what we were talking about, right? And yes, go ahead, sir.
there are so many things. In fact, it will take a whole day for me to really tell you everything about Mr. Jinnah. Some of it you already know, and the problem is that what you know is not good enough. What you know is, where was he born? When did he start education? In Sindh Madrasa, then went over to Bombay, studied over there, left and went to England, joined the Lincoln's Inn, became a lawyer, came back, and then initially roughed it up, but then later on became one of the topmost lawyers in the world. There are a lot of people who will say a lot of things, people who themselves can't do much, but they want to criticize those who have done something so that it sort of blows them up. Mr. Jinnah was one of the greatest lawyers, and I'll talk about it in a little while. In fact, there are a lot of people who will tell you that Mr. Jinnah was sort of propped up by the British against the Congress, which is not a fact. The British never, ever liked him, but they couldn't do anything about it because he was straight, he was honest, and he was always within the law. So there was nothing they could do about it. And that was great about Britain because they could not do anything about him because of him being legally right. Today, it doesn't matter if you're legally right or not right. This is what we have come down to. Our judges and all, we all know what's happening in this country. And I tell you that, we celebrate a lot of time on 14th August, 23rd March, tomorrow, the 25th of December, which is his birthday. We celebrate the 11th of September, which is his death anniversary. But we never learn about the man. We never want to learn about the man because of various reasons, because of vested interests. So, as the sort of points that were to be covered have been already pointed out to you, this is just about a little thought about it. When I say, if I want to establish the very essence of and uniqueness of Quaid-e-Azam, He is incomparable to any leader of his time or any other times. This is the challenge for all to delve into. All the resources that you will find, all you can go on Google, whatever, ask anybody, and then find me a leader from any part of the world, from any period of history. It's a big claim, right? A leader who did not live like the people he led, did not eat or drink like the people he led, did not dress up like the people he led, and did not even speak the language of the people he led. And the people followed him with a devotion seldom accorded to anyone. Bring me a complete package, all these things. And believe me, there was a friend of mine who said, the Prophet, I said, the Prophet used to talk to the people he used to talk to in their own language. In fact, I said, if you read Surah Namal, Hazrat Suleiman is talking to the ants and he's talking in their language. Jinnah Sahab used to speak in the language he knew. And people say he didn't know Urdu. Obviously, he didn't know that much of Urdu because today Urdu being our national language in a way. But at that time, where he lived, Karachi and Bombay, mostly, Urdu was hardly spoken. You could hear Gujarati, Makrani, Sindhi, but not really Urdu. Urdu was spoken in UP, etc. Although it was generally understood, but Jinnah Saab's mother tongue was not Urdu. His mother tongue basically was Gujarati. And then he learned English. So this is very important to know. Another of his unique quality, which was unmatched by any other Indian leader, was that he would abide by the law of the land in letter and spirit. While many of his contemporaries at that time were put behind bars by the British rulers of the subcontinent, they could not cite any breach of law by Mr. Jinnah, and therefore he was never arrested. However, somehow the masses had been so psyched that a leader acquired a higher status when he resisted the mandate of the rulers. Once Mr. Jinnah was asked that how come Gandhi and other leaders stand up against the British and are arrested, Mr. Jinnah replied, one is arrested only when one commits a crime or breaks the law. I struggle within the rights guaranteed by the law in the prevailing constitution. Another great quality, all within the power of ambit, was that Mr. Jinnah never resorted in kind to personal attacks against his opponents. However, he was quick to respond when a principle he was struggling for was attacked or slighted. Once, when attacked by a knife-wielding assassin of the Khalsa party, and you know the Maulvis were never for Pakistan. What they're doing today, you can see yourself. And the would-be assassin was overpowered and restrained by Jinnah's supporters, who wanted to physically maul the assassin. Mr. Jinnah stopped his supporters, saying, keep him restrained and call the police. The law will take its own course. We cannot take the law into our hands. Over here, you talk against some political leader and people are ready to shoot you. So these are things. I also want
Could you explain this again, please? Somebody came and wanted to stab him, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then what happened?
People overpowered him.
People overpowered.
And they wanted
the
to-
guy who was stabbing him.
Right.
Okay.
And when they wanted to sort of, manhandle this man, Mr. Jinnah stopped them by
I
saying,
see.
let the law take its own course. We cannot do this. Just restrain him so that we can call the police and let him be,
Okay.
going. Now, here's something which the Congress used to spread about him, and many people who were with the Congress at the time, including Muslims, they would cite it, and these are some of the things that they said about him.
So we're talking about statements of his opponents, right?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
Jinnah Sahab is vain. Jinnah is the political enemy number one. He's a bull in China's shop. He wants to become the dictator of India, prouder than the proudest of pharaohs. Would to God he was silent forever. The most insufferable man, disruptor of India. He's an egoist who would own no equal. He would let India go to hell for the sake of his communal ambition. Most unrelenting in his fanaticism. To him, a Muslim is ever more precious than 1,000 Hindus. arrogant and uncompromising, and essentially bad man. These were things that were talked about him at the time.
And who told about him? Who is the person?
These are people
Okay.
from Congress and other places. It became common. And today,
Right.
a lot of us think that he was arrogant and so on. I'll talk about his arrogancy and you'll realize what I'm saying.
Mhm.
So precisely this proudest of Pauravas, this most insufferable man, this fanatic, this egoist, this India's enemy number one, this arrogant and uncompromising, this disruptor of India, this essentially a bad man, carved out a new nation in the world map. Has anybody ever seriously analyzed why this very man, who was called the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, this angel of peace, suddenly became the greatest villain? Only because Jinnah said that Muslims have equal rights to live in India as free men, who could practice their own faith and not as bonded slaves of the Hindus. 100 years hence, the RSS policies against Muslims and other minorities speaks volumes of the vision and foresight of Mr. Jinnah. See what's happening there today. The Quaid-e-Azam is not too late for the Pakistan nation to realize the gift of freedom that the Quaid fought for and that we are now enjoying. This is very, very important. Before that, there were two titles given to him. The one we all know, we call him Quaid-e-Azam, which means the great leader. But there was another title given to him, and this was given to him by the Congress, Ambassador of Hindu-Muslim Unity. You people go and study these 14 points and everything, and you go and study them by rote and answer the questions in your exam to get numbers. Do you know that he gave up the 14 points at one time and then changed his theory to two-nation theory? We have stopped thinking. A friend of mine once said that the two-nation theory ended when East Pakistan was separated. So I said, I agree with you. From the two-nation theory, it became a three-nation theory because they have not merged with India. So that part stays. We are not thinking at all. We just sort of echoing whatever we hear from here and there, and most of the people really either have no knowledge or they just want to show that they have a lot of knowledge, which is worse actually, right? So this is very important to understand. What did Mr. Jinnah see 100 years hence? Now, the Congress party was exactly wanting what is being happening now. And they were just trying to appease the people. They were trying to say, no, Muslims are part of us and so on and so forth. But basically, they were not. And this Mr. Jinnah sensed. And he realized that, okay, well, Hindus are not going to tolerate us. Although if you read the history of India, Hindus have hardly ruled India. Literally, hardly ruled India. And Muslims, they've been ruling, and the British have been ruling. And they have been nice to the Hindus. Otherwise, if the Hindus were in power, they could have, sort of massacred everybody, which they did not. There is a story where Akbar, Tipu Sultan, they built temples for the Hindus. And when the Hindus talk about, ransacking the temple at Somnath and so on, okay, he did not ransack any other temple. He ransacked the temple which had a lot of wealth in it. So that was for wealth and not really to, knock down the idols over there, like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in the Kaaba. So this is what I want to tell you now. Because this, I want you to understand a few things. I will now talk to you a little bit about what others literally could say, and I'm going to tell you most of it is in sayings of other people, and definitely most of them will be non-Muslims, right? They'll be Hindus, they'll be Sikhs, they'll be British. Okay, so just listen out slowly. First of all, Professor Stanley Walport, when he wrote his book on Quaid-e-Azam, what does he say? Few individuals significantly alter the course of history. Fewer still modify the map of the world. Hardly anyone can be credited with creating a nation state. Muhammad Ali Jinnah did all three. Then there was this chap, Sarat Chandra Bose, he's a Hindu, and this is what he said. Mr. Jinnah was great as a lawyer, once great as a congressman, great as the leader of Muslims, great as a world politician and diplomat, and greatest of all as a man of action.
And who is this person?
Sarat Chandra Bose. This is quoted in the book My Brother, written by Fatma Jinnah.
Okay.
And he goes on to say, Mr. Jinnah's passing away, the world has lost one of the greatest statesmen, and Pakistan its life giver, philosopher, and guide.
Great.
All right. Now, there is another Hindu, Girilal Jain, and he is from the Dalit, means they were not really recognized as great people anyway. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the greatest benefactor of Hindus in modern times. He was not a Hindu in disguise. So he used to be, that is where he got his title of Hindu-Muslim unity. He respected human beings. Okay, here's another saying. This is from Hugh Tinker, Britisher, one of the most extraordinary men in history. And this he has taken from the book that Jawaharlal Nehru wrote about him, who was definitely against him.
So Jawaharlal Nehru said he's a great leader.
Yeah, one of the most extraordinary men in history.
Extraordinary men in history. Okay.
Then Lord Pethick Lawrence, he says, and again quoted by Fatma Jinnah in her book, Gandhi died at the hands of an assassin. Jinnah died by his devotion to Pakistan. And here's a Muslim, Ziauddin Ahmad Sureri, he wrote his book, Founder of Pakistan. He would not let himself be deflected, nor allow his followers to be deflected by a bewildering multiplicity of religious, cultural, social, economic, and other issues. Step by step, slowly and steadily, he took his followers forward to their cherished goal. He believed in full and thorough preparation before an action was taken. Now, John Biggs Davison, another Britisher, says, although without Gandhi, Hindustan would still have gained independence. And without Lenin and Mao, Russia and China would still have endured communist revolution. But without Jinnah, there would have been no Pakistan.
Correct.
Jinnah has contributed, this is Richard Simon saying, Jinnah contributed more than any other man to Pakistan's survival. Sir Aga Khan has said the greatest man he ever met. Beverly Nichols, in her book, The Verdict on India, says the most important man in Asia. Dr. Kalishnath Kajju, another Hindu from West Bengal, he was a governor in 1948 of West Bengal, says, an outstanding figure of this century, not only in India, but in the whole world. And here is Abdul Rahman Azam Pasha, Secretary General of the Arab League, who said, one of the greatest leaders in the Muslim world. And also continued to say the Grand Mufti of Palestine considered his death as a great loss to the entire world of Islam. Gordon Johnson, Director Center of South Asian Studies, says, he set a great example to other statesmen to follow by his skill in negotiation, his integrity, and his honesty. Lord Lothian, another Britisher, though Jinnah's scheme of partition was good, it would take at least 25 years to take shape. But great wars and great men shorten history. And Jinnah was such a man who could alter the history of a nation. He started his campaign for Pakistan officially in 1940 through the Pakistan Resolution, and 7 years later, you had the country. Think about this, please. Now, this is about Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten was the Viceroy, had enormous confidence in his persuasive powers, but as far as Jinnah was concerned, he felt that though he tried every trick he could not shake Jinnah's resolve to have partition. Mountbatten said that Jinnah had a consuming determination to realize the dream of Pakistan, and he remained focused on that till his death. In fact, at another place, Mountbatten, when he found out later on through another book that was written, when it was revealed that in 1940, Jinnah Sahib had contacted tuberculosis, and his Parsi doctor in Bombay just kept everything hidden as it was supposed to be. But then he died in 47 or 48, 8 years later. What Mountbatten said was, if I had known this is happening, I would have delayed it and it would have never happened. Yeah, it's on record. What I'm telling you is all on record. Please, I can give you the references if you ever think that I'm just talking out of hat.
Very nice.
Harry S. Truman, US President. What does he say? He was the originator of the dream that became Pakistan, architect, the state, and father of the world's largest Muslim nation. Mr. Jinnah was the recipient of a devotion and loyalty seldom accorded to any man. Quaid-e-Azam Aziz Saab, उन्होंने किताब लिखी उनके ऊपर, and he says, Muslim India was beset by socio-economic frustration. At such a time, Jinnah guided a virtually rudderless Muslim league. Aziz refers to Jinnah as the greatest Muslim leader of the 20th century who was able to turn a dream state of Pakistan into a reality. Then we have Nelson Mandela, who said, Ali Jinnah is a constant source of inspiration for all those who are fighting against racial group discrimination. And when he had come to Islamabad in 1995, insisted on going to Karachi and visit the Mazar-e-Qaid. These people don't do it just like that. There is something which they've read about him, heard about him, felt about him when they do it.
Yes.
Now, I talked to you a little bit about Sarojini Naidu. She was called the Nightingale of Bombay, and she was in a way in love with Jinnah. And this is what she had to say, and it's beautiful. I don't think anybody can say it better than this. These are her words. A sincerity of purpose and the lasting charm of a character animated by a brave conception of duty and an austere and lovely code of private honor and public integrity. Tall and stately, but thin to the point of emaciation, languid and luxurious of habit, Muhammad Ali Jinnah's attenuated form is a deceptive sheath of a spirit of exceptional vitality and endurance. Somewhat formal and fastidious, and a little aloof and imperious of manner, the calm hauteur of his accustomed reserve but masks, for those who know him, a naive and eager humanity, an intuition quick and tender as a woman's, a humor gay and winning as a child's. Preeminently rational and practical, discreet and dispassionate in his estimate and acceptance of life, the obvious sanity and serenity of his worldly wisdom effectively disguise a shy and splendid idealism, which is of the very essence of the man. This is perfect, I think. And again, she went on to say, the casual pen might surely find it easier to describe his limitations rather than to define his virtues. This is what we have been doing. But the true criterion of Jinnah's greatness lies not in the range and variety of his knowledge and experience, but in the faultless perception and flawless refinement of his subtle mind and spirit, not in the diversity of aims and challenge of a towering personality, but rather in a lofty singleness and sincerity of purpose and the lasting charm of a character animated by a brave conception of duty and an austere and lovely code of private honor and public integrity. This is from Sarojini Naidu. Now, what did Mr. Gandhi say? Jinnah is incorruptible and brave, shortly. Then Nehru was paraphrased.
That was Gandhi who said
That
this.
Gandhi said this.
Okay.
An old advocate of unity, Mr. M.A. Jinnah was advanced than his colleagues and stood head and shoulders above them. This is Nehru saying. Now, this is Sardarji talking about him. I'll just give you the name. All religions hold that God sends suitable people into the world to work out his plans from time to time and at critical junctures. I regard Mr. Jinnah as the man who has been called upon to correct the wrong ways in which the people of India have been led by the leadership of Mr. Gandhi. Congress took a wrong turn when it adopted wholesale the non-cooperation program of Mr. Gandhi and assumed an attitude of open hostility towards Britain and tried to infuse the minds of people a spirit of defiance of law and civil disobedience, more or less thinly veiled under a formula of truth and non-violence. Moreover, by Mahatma find Mr. Gandhi, it appealed to the idolatrous superstition of the Hindus that converting the religious adherence of the Hindu section of population to the Mahatma into a political support of his non-cooperation movement. While this strategy was of some avail in hustling the British government to yield more and more, it divided the people into Hindu and non-Hindu sections. In these circumstances, a man was needed to stand up to the Congress and tell its leaders that their organization, however powerful numerically and financially, does not represent the whole of India. I admire Mr. Jinnah and feel grateful to him because in advocating the cause of Muslims, he is championing the cause of all the classes that are in danger of being crushed under the steamroller of the caste Hindu majority acting under the inspiration and orders of Mr. Gandhi.
And
This is
person is
MC Raja, leader of the scheduled caste. He said this on 25th December 1940.
okay.
Right? So, I mean,
So-
can you imagine all this? Really, I mean, this is super.
So you want to talk about some quotes by Quaid-e-Azam?
Yeah, I can do that also. But you know that I can really run out. I cannot run out of whatever people have said about it. Believe me, हमें इसका आधा भी नहीं आता.
Yes.
Just a few quotes by Mr. Jinnah himself, which are my favorites. Some, of course, has been quoted to you here already by Capt Wali. Like he said, no nation can ever be worthy of its existence that cannot take its women along with the men. It is a crime against humanity that our women are shut up within the four walls of the houses as prisoners. There is no sanction anywhere for the deplorable condition in which our women have to live. Another place he says, you are free. This is his first speech. He's talking the same thing over here, what he was talking about there as Hindu-Muslim unity.
First speech after Pakistan?
Yeah, but
Okay.
this was actually made on 11th of August, but the first speech in Pakistan.
In Pakistan, okay.
You are free. You are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosque or to any other places of worship in this state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion, caste or creed. That has nothing to do with the business of the state. And we have divided ourselves again into ethnic divisions like Hindi, Balochi, Pathan, Punjabi, etc. and then into religious divisions. And believe me, I mean, if you read the Quran, Allah says that, going into sect, making sects is fitna. That's the word of the Quran. कि फिरकेबाजी फितना और हमने सारे बना दिए और कुछ यहाँ बने इंडिया में बने believe me there were no Deobandis and Barelvis during at least 1,000 years after the Prophet also they started in India. And what did Mr. Jinnah have to say about this? When he walked out of a meeting in India and somebody wanted to ask him a question which would have of course created a lot of problems depending on the answer, which sect of the Muslims do you belong to? And his immediate reply was, I belong to the same sect as the Prophet. Wherever you want to go. At another place, somebody, actually, asked him, which priest in Islam do you follow? Because there were Deobandis and Barelvis and Wahhabis and so on. And again, the immediate reply was, in Islam, everybody is his own priest. Don't we know that? You will be questioned alone. Nobody's going to say that, okay, you listen to so and so,
Yes.
therefore it's not your fault. No way, it's your fault. So ये जो चीजें हैं ना ये बहुत जरूरी हैं. तो
आपने कायद-ए-आज़म के ऊपर एक पोएम भी लिखी है, वो आप सुनाना पसंद करें? आपको तो याद है वैसे?
याद है लेकिन उसका प्रीफेस पढ़ना चाहता हूँ.
अच्छा, ओके. तो आप जब तक सुनाइए मैं
प्रीफेस सुनाना पहले.
अच्छा, प्रीफेस आप सुनाना चाहते हैं? Let me see.
By the way, I urge you people to please
This
read.
is what it is? Or
No, not this.
okay.
Ode we have.
Ode. What does it say? What's the name of
I
the
think ode to the guide. डालोगे तो आ जाएगा. ode डालोगे तो आ जाएगा.
ode?
ये नहीं ठीक है, right to the bottom.
Editing. Okay, here it is. Such man must be.
नहीं बहुत से लोगों पर. This
is the
not
top?
Yeah, no, this is not the top. It's not going any further.
No.
ये क्या हुआ? आगे नहीं, ये तो रोड शुरू हो गई. एक और जगह ना हो.
एक आपने जो पढ़ी थी
वो तो
लिखा
है,
था,
वो तो यही है.
यही है, ये आपने लिखा था. तो आप वैसे बता दीजिए, doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, हाँ ये आगे है.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is what I wrote sometime in 1987 or 88.
Okay.
And I did this because somehow I was lucky that I was like anybody today, knowing that much about Mr. Jinnah, that he created Pakistan and so on, father of nation. Chutti badi hoti hai, 25 din
Yeah.
But I was in the Air Force. I was in Abu Dhabi in 1976, and there was 100-year celebration of his birthday because he was born in 1876. And the embassy over there called us and they gave us, seminars and dinners and so on and so forth, and a lot of pamphlets. And when I read them, I told myself, I don't know this man. And if I don't know, my friends don't know. And those after me will know even little.
That's right.
So I started to, gather everything that I could. And once I took my release from the Air Force, I had done plenty by then. So I went to the Jinnah Academy over here, which is opposite the Quaid's Mazar. And I talked to the director over there, Mr. Shariful Mujahid. And I told him what I wanted to do. His initial response, not that he said it, but body language was, okay, here's another forces person retired, and he says he wants to write a book or something. So, well, he asked me to read a certain book. I said, sir, I've read it. Then he said, read another book. And I said, I've read it. Then after that, my answer on the third book that I've read it, he got a little interested. He said,
who are you talking to?
I'm talking to the director of the Quaid Academy.
Director Quaid Academy in
Karachi.
In Karachi, okay.
So then he said, okay, fine. So what all have you read? So I said, sir, I have probably read, without exaggeration, maybe around 35, 40 books.
35, 40 books on Quaid-e-Azam itself.
Good, bad, and ugly. People have written bad about him also. It's okay. And not all, but at least the newspapers that used to come to our house on the 14th of August and, these days like 11th September, 25th December, etc. So people used to write about him, people who were probably his contemporaries at the time. So I have the cuttings of all those, and I still have them. By the way, anybody wants to have a look, he can always have the look. He can have the references, books that I'm talking about. He can have a look at these cuttings of the newspapers. So then he said, okay, fine, you can come along and take whatever you want from here. We will give you photocopies, we can't give you the book, etc. So I was actually doing nothing. I was an LPR from the Air Force, and I was in the process of joining PIA, so basically free. So about 3 to 4 days in a week, I would spend about 3 to 4 hours at least in the Quaid Academy, going through books and all. And one day he just walked through and he said, he used to call me Commander Saab because the card I had given him was Wing Commander. So he said, Commander Saab, how is it going? So I said, sir, it's okay. And my passion, if those who know me, is more on poetry than anything else. So I showed him a couple of verses I had written on Mr. Jinnah. He was very excited and he said, why don't you complete it? So I said, okay. And in about a week's time, I gave him a whole poem, which I'm going to read out to you. And I can never forget this man's, gestures or his actions, because he was sitting across the table and he was reading the poem. Then he gets up and he walks across the table, comes close to me. He said, Commander Saab, uthiye. So I got up and he said, Chappi man. So he, hugged me and he said, this is one of the best I have seen.
Really?
And then he told me that why don't you write a preface on this poem so that people who know nothing about him should know a little bit.
Okay, great.
So that is where the preface comes in. The poem was first. So
Okay.
this is how I'm going to read it out from here. People can also see. Once in a millennium comes a man so towering, so unique, and so different that it is impossible to comprehend him by the normal yardstick. Such a man is nature's one-time freak phenomenon. Great people all may differ in personality, disposition, and fields of accomplishment, but each in his own way contributes to humanity and leaves behind a legacy that forms the basis of fiction only. Such men must be understood singly by themselves and the nature and manner of their achievements. Any attempt to study them in an overall comparative concept would not only be wrong, it would be downright unjust. This is so because the circumstances leading to the attainment are never absolutely identical. Many of these people, these creators,
Make it bigger if you like.
okay,
You want to read the ode itself rather than. Because they will enjoy it.
They will. This is also very good. Actually.
Okay. All right.
It will be.
I know if you're an author, you every word is very close to your heart, and you don't.
So there were many of these people alike, but great nevertheless. Just like a lion is a lion, and a tiger, or a rose is a rose, and a tulip. And just like Buddha was Buddha, and Confucius was Confucius, Mr. Jinnah was Jinnah. Men like Jinnah do not need the tag of greatness attached to them. In fact, it is greatness itself which derives value from such men. They go about doing the very best they know, in the very best manner they can, without trying to explain the reasons for each step taken during the course of their movement towards a strategy. They leave behind a trail of events for the students of history to gather and narrate to generations that follow. Armed with invincible courage, a clear vision, and an indomitable spirit, Mr. Jinnah marched on and changed the map of the Indian subcontinent. The achievement of Mr. Jinnah was largely a one-man crusade. While he had helpers at his beck and call, and these helpers must be recognized and honored as such, no other man in India could have even hoped to come close to achieving the concept of division of India on the basis of nationality, as first outlined by Allama Muhammad Iqbal. Describing the attributes of a leader, Iqbal writes, by leader, I mean one who by divine gift or experience possesses keen perception of the trend of modern history. Such men are really the divine forces of a people, but they are God's gift and cannot be made to order. Iqbal was only acknowledging the leadership of Mr. Jinnah over the Muslims of India when he wrote to him in 1937, "You are the only Muslim in India today to whom the community has a right to look up to for safe guidance through the storm which is coming to northwest India and perhaps to the whole of India."
May I request you to do, because we're running out of time.
Almost out of time.
We're running out of time. Yeah.
Like all great men fighting for a cause of freedom, Mr. Jinnah too was criticized, ridiculed, opposed, exploited, cajoled, and misrepresented. But undeterred by the pressures, he moved on with single-minded devotion and honesty of purpose, with least regard for personal comforts, health, or safety. His detractors consisted of the British rulers, the Hindu majority, and the Muslim sycophants. He, however, kept the interest of the downtrodden, disunited, and demoralized Muslim masses supreme in his mind and brushed aside all challenges, however sinister they may have been. Emerging triumphant in the end. More than the victory that he achieved, which in itself was unique, it was the manner of his achievement that defies descriptive justice. While his opponents did not lose any sleep in employing even the meanest tactics to frustrate him, they were unanimous, albeit reluctantly, that his dealings were free from manipulation and double talk, and not once did he soil his hand with what is often termed as dirty politics. Okay, we can call it off here, and I will just read the poem. You can take this from me, or you can take this from Wali Saab and read it on you.
Sure.
This is the poem of his whole life in a way. The son of a trading merchant was he, who went by the name of Muhammad Ali. At 16, he left home, his kith and kin, for England, where he joined the Lincoln's Inn. The youngest Indian to be called to the bar, for a trader's son, it was a cry too far. Assiduous, devoted, he made his own way, and finally met fame in the courts of Bombay. But law alone was too small for his scope. Politics, he felt, had more promise, more hope. He soon made a name in this field too, as a man of honor, records Naidu. I covered some of what Sarojini Naidu has been saying about him. For the national interest, he worked from the start. He didn't want to break up. He wanted the United States of India, actually.
Yeah.
For the national interest, he worked from the start. But within this framework, he was a Muslim at heart. Dedicated, bold, and sincere to the core, he fought for the Muslims on a nationalist throne. As ambassador of unity, this is the title he got from them. As ambassador of unity, he wanted home rule. Any thoughts to the contrary was not his school. As time went by, it was abundantly clear that the Congress wanted no power to share.
Can we take one question in between?
Okay.
There's a question coming up from Aftab Amir,
Uh-huh.
and he says, Assalamu alaikum, sir. The question is, why was Quaid-e-Azam known as ambassador of peace and unity?
Because he wanted to unite people, because he was not wanting a separation initially.
Okay.
His basic, agar aap read the 14 points, they were to give every nation, every caste, every religion a chance to be ruling the country.
Mhm.
Okay, so he was not wanting to divide initially. He came to division only when he realized that RSS was formed in 1925, and he saw what is happening and he changed his stance. And if you look what is happening in India today, at least give him this credit that he could see more than 100 years ago.
Yes, he was a visionary, but is it because of RSS that he changed his stance?
Obviously,
That was the main reason.
because RSS was also, it was also because the way the Congress was behaving, he realized that they are part of the RSS, whether they want to show it or not. It was a more political thing. So
Correct.
we continue from here.
Right. Got it, Aftab? Did you get the answer you were looking for?
So we can.
Okay.
For the national interest, he worked from the start. This is what he did. National interest means Indian interest.
Mhm.
But within this framework, he was a Muslim at heart. Dedicated, bold, and sincere to the core, he fought for the Muslims on a nationalist floor. As ambassador of unity, he wanted home rule. Any thoughts to the contrary was not his school. As time went by, it was abundantly clear that the Congress wanted no power to share. For the Muslims, he saw consequences dire, out of the frying pan into the fire. The British must leave, of that he was sure. But for the minorities, he had to find a cure. He drafted safeguards, these are the 14 points. He drafted safeguards which at first were agreed, but this was short-lived, a Congress mystique. Upright he was, and his rivals knew that promises made would be carried through. His word of honor, if once spoken, was known to all, would never be broken. While he remained steadfast on any agreement, breaking covenant by others was alarmingly frequent. It made him bitter, it made him irate, but go back on his word was not his trait. Reason or logic, they were loath to understand. They had majority and hence an upper hand. Concessions to Muslims was not their desire, as that would lessen power over India entire. Here, here, they cried, is for all to see. The All India Congress is the only party, because they had Muslims with them, you see. The All India Congress is the only party. Mr. Jinnah and his league has nothing to do with the affairs of India, so said Nehru. He cried for unity, but there was no echo. The Congress was riding high, and all were to bow. Rioters were rampant, and Muslims were the prey. The headcounts were rising day after day. Great Gandhi too added to the herd. When Muslims, he said, must quit or convert. This is a speech he had made. Muslims in India either converts or they have come from outside. Those who have come from outside, please go back from where they came. And those who have converted, reconvert to Hinduism. So he could sense all this, that this is, regardless of what they were doing politically, they had this in mind. Great Gandhi too added to the herd, where Muslims, he said, must quit or convert. Jinnah fought on, but despair was his lot. His pleadings he could see total to naught. क्योंकि मुसलमान के साथ में ले रहे थे ना, काफी सारे उनके साथ में ले रहे थे. Disgusted, frustrated, he called it a day, gathered his talents and sailed away. I have nothing to do with this, I'm going away. So England chale gaye. As soon as the Muslims could sense their plight, now this is the mass which is sensing, not the political people, not the Maulvis. As soon as the Muslims could sense their plight, they sent for Jinnah to lead in their fight. I covered that Allama Iqbal wrote to him to come back. Okay? Homeward he came, the true son of the soil, and tried to find reason in the growing turmoil. Shortchanged and slighted, but the leader of the league, forestalled, checkmated, all sham and intrigue. His manner throughout had poise and grace, of duplicity no hint, of deceit no trace. Think 100 times, he would say, this is his quote, think 100 times, he would say, then decide on a course and hold no sway. A rule which he followed through thick and thin, a rule by which he made many a win. He soon could see the futility of it all, as loud and clear came his clarion call. Muslims are a nation by all canons of the law, and those who thought different, their thinking had a flaw. Regarding the British, he sent a clear note to verify his uttering, they must take a vote. Thus to the polls went the whole country, where support for the League was for all to see. This was 1937. Though the League was established by the polls result, for the Congress it was an affront and insult, which widened the gap between the two evermore, erupting in the shape of riotings galore. And so, with the tension and grimness of things, the mounting distrust and the senseless killings, the growing intrigues, the deceit and the mess, he cried, I want Pakistan, no more, no less. The British laughed, the Hindus mocked, the cronies taunted, ye boli lo. But he pressed on, determined and undaunted, till the final hour struck a victory to his cause, a new home for the Muslims. Pakistan it was. Disjointed, unruly, unsure was the band which he led so bravely to the promised land. Unity, faith, discipline was his call, and like the Pied Piper, behind him came all. He gathered the crowd and welded a nation, some for sacrifice, but most for salvation. Such was the spirit and such was the need, and the man behind it was Jinnah indeed. Humble to the humble and proud to the proud, elite and lordly, yet a darling of the crowd. They understood his tongue, nor habit or style, but deep down they knew that he had no guile. The Congress still hoped to inherit the power, unmindful that coalition was need of the hour. Forgetting it's always majorities that give to others the reason and freedom to live, they called him stubborn, unyielding, unbending, but so were all great men in principles defending. His heart was so clean, his mind so clear, in a logical debate he had no fear. No Hindu, no Muslim, no Briton could say that he tried to win in a dubious way. And even his ardent enemies agreed that he had no need, he was the need. How all the pundits, the prophets had failed, as this one man moved on unassailed. In times to come, the Hindus may see that Jinnah was the cause for India to be free. There never was a man born quite like him. A great human, a great Muslim, but the human in him was greater still, as that is the true bow to Allah's will, or bow to Allah's will is Islam. Okay. A fighter he was, a soldier he was not. A man so straight he never could be bought. Power, nor riches, nor threats could subdue his great will towards a path he felt true. I say no more, as it's for all to see. The fruits of his deeds, a new country, achieved through no war or guns or coercion, but by sheer dint of will and the power of reason. Today, when I see some talkers complain, my heart is in rue, my soul is in pain. But talkers are just talkers, they do no task. Where are the doers is plainly what I ask. Once in a millennium, such a man does come. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Quaid-e-Azam. I can tell you a hell of a lot. I mean, what I've told you is maybe 1% of what I really know or I have.
Very nice.
So,
Indeed.
thank you very much. Any more questions? So, anything about Jinnah?
Yeah. Please ask any question that you may be thinking about, like Aftab just asked. Any other questions? I'm sure Captain Hadi will be more than happy to answer.
If your question is such that I don't have the answer, I will tell you, I'm sorry I don't have the answer, but I'll get back to you.
Yes.
Okay? I will not give you a wrong answer, or I'll not take you away from it.
Yes, Suhail, anything from your side?
सर आई हैव अ क्वेश्चन कि पाकिस्तान का जो कायद-ए-आज़म का एक विजन था पाकिस्तान बनाने के लिए, उसके बाद वो विजन हमें नज़र नहीं आया कि वो लीडरशिप पाकिस्तान में, वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कायद-ए-आज़म की डेथ के बाद वो चीज़ें नज़र नहीं आई। उनका जो एक विजन था पाकिस्तान के लिए कि एजुकेशन, सोसाइटी, एक सबको अपने एक राइट्स हों, वो क्यों लैक हो गए? प्रॉब्लम क्या आई कि वो चीज़ आगे तक क्यों नहीं कंटिन्यू हो पाई?
हाँ बेटा, बहुत अच्छी क्वेश्चन, very good question. Have to think about this. Actually, this is what I try to tell you in between the lines. Pakistan was made by Quaid-e-Azam and the masses. The elite, the Mulvis, they were not interested. They came in afterwards, and Jinnah Sahib was not well. He had kept his sickness hidden. He knew he was going to die. I can tell you all about what he knew about himself, and he told his doctor to keep it secret also, because he knew that if he dies before the birth of Pakistan, they will never be able to get it. Hoping that there will be such people who will continue. There were people who tried, but the people who came into power were the bureaucrats and the politicians. और politicians को आप आज भी देख लो, उनको पाकिस्तान की कोई फिक्र नहीं है, उनको अपनी फिक्र है, ठीक है ना? And I'm telling this, every one of them. People think that, oh, Capt Wali Khan, great. Yes, Capt Wali Khan was a very honest man financially. He never corrupted money, but he was not politically honest. There are reasons I can tell you. I can give you the books to read. There's a book written by Colonel Eli Baksh. He was his personal physician in Ziyarat. And he talks a lot in that book. But the book was printed after the death of Capt Wali Khan, because Capt Wali Khan had asked him once. He had come back and Jinnah Sahib died. So he called him and he asked him. This is written in the book, this is not from my side. He asked him, what did Mr. Jinnah say after I leave? He said, I didn't like the tone in which he said it. So I said, sir, he said nothing. And he raised his forefinger and said, ये किताब में पढ़ सकते हैं, आपका नाम है My Last Days with the Qaid by Colonel Eli Baksh.
He was a doctor.
Yeah. He raised his forefinger and said, well, then let it be nothing. Or if there is something, you will meet dire consequences. Right? So ये ऐसी नहीं लिखी उन्होंने, उनके ज़माने में नहीं लिखा, ठीक है ना?
अच्छा, एक और सवाल पूछा है आफ्ताब अमीर ने, वो कह रहे हैं कि व्हाट वाज पाकिस्तान रेजोल्यूशन, इसका जस्ट थोड़ा सा बताइए।
पाकिस्तान रेजोल्यूशन वो तो 23 मार्च को, आपको पता है कि पाकिस्तान शायद ना बनता अगर बंगाल आपके साथ ना होता। By the way, all of you who know a little bit of history, Muslim League was made in Dhaka. Okay, the man who presented the resolution of Pakistan on the 40th in 1940 on 23rd of March was called Sher Bengal, Fazli Hamza. Right? तो बंगाल इतनी बड़ी पॉपुलेशन हमसे ज्यादा थी कि आने के बाद अंग्रेज could not do much about it because it was a big massive, and they tried their best. I mean, I can tell you a lot of stories. First they said, let's partition Bengal, realizing that while all the jute was being sort of grown in the east, that means East Pakistan at the time, the factories were all in Calcutta, which was West Bengal, and therefore it would finish. And when this was presented that why don't we, partition Bengal as this and that, Jinnah Sahib didn't say, don't partition. He said, you if you want to, but Bengal is separate. And it became separate ultimately anyway.
तो उसका जस्ट ये पूछ रहे हैं कि क्या था पाकिस्तान
रेजोल्यूशन यही था ना बेटा कि हमें एक ऐसा मुल्क बनाना है जहां पे we are not slaves of the Hindus as you see them today. This is why I'm saying कि आज जो वहां हो रहा है देख लो, उन्होंने 100 साल पहले देख लिया था, ठीक है ना। अगर आप वहां पे होते तो आप इस वक्त अपने आप जा रहे होते, कोई रोड के सड़क पे कहता है कि बोलो जय हिंद, बोलो श्री लाल हरे श्री लाल हरे राम, और नहीं बोलोगे तो आपको मार देंगे। रोज हो रहा है,
अभी भी हो रहा है।
ही सेंस दिस मच, इतना विजन, माय गॉड।
बिल्कुल। मैं आखिर में कैप्टन नियाज नबी भी यहाँ पे मौजूद हैं, तो मैं उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि वो कुछ बोलना चाहे तो प्लीज, ताकि बच्चों के लिए फायदा हो रही है, रिकॉर्डिंग हो रही है, इट विल गो दूसरे स्टूडेंट्स को भी इंशाल्लाह मिलेगा।
हाँ भाई नियाज भाई, खैरियत?
नियाज भाई आप अगर कुछ बोलना चाहें प्लीज।
से समथिंग गुड बैड और अगली, आई डोंट माइंड।
हाँ हेलो प्लीज, थैंक यू वेरी मच हादी के, मुझे तो पता है कि यू आर ऑलवेज टोटली फॉर कायद आज़म। मैंने ये नज़म अभी पहले भी सुनी भी थी मैंने। ये जो सवाल किया आखिर में, ये बहुत बड़ा सवाल किया है कि ये जो कायद आज़म ने बात की थी वो अब क्यों नहीं आ रहा ये चीज़ें।
तो इसमें कि वो लोग जो थे उनके साथ मासेस थे ना, उनको टाइम ही नहीं मिला।
हाँ वो बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं। उसमें मैं एक सिर्फ एक क्वेश्चन छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ, मैं कुछ बोलना नहीं चाहता इस वक्त, क्योंकि हादी रिज़वी ने बड़ा अच्छा कवर किया सारा। इसमें सिर्फ ये याद रखने के दो चीज़ें हैं, एक है मुल्क हासिल करना और दूसरा है मुल्क चलाना।
सही।
कायद-ए-आज़म उस टाइम पे आए जब मुल्क को हासिल करना था,
सही।
और अब मुल्क चलाना जो है वो थोड़ा फ़र्क है। ये अब हमारी जिम्मेदारी है। ये इस तरह आप इसको आम फहम में बात समझने के लिए मैं इस तरफ ये कहूँगा कि आपने अगर गाड़ी ख़रीदनी है तो उसके लिए आपने कैश का बंदोबस्त करना है, और वो एक इवेंट है। आपके पास गाड़ी नहीं है, आप गए शोरूम में, पैसे आपके पास हैं, आपने गाड़ी ख़रीद ली, तो आप अब ओनर ऑफ द कार हो गए। अब गाड़ी चलाना जो है ये इवेंट नहीं है, ये एक प्रोसेस है। ये प्रोसेस, ये जो है ना, इसको आपने फ़र्क को समझना है। और किस तरह ये मतलब कि मुल्क तो मिल गया हमें, मुल्क चलाना जो है वो एक इज़ अ डिफरेंट बॉल गेम। तो इस पे गौर करें, इस पे बड़ा अच्छा सवाल है। और ये तो इसको
सेल्फ ऑनेस्टी इज इम्पोर्टेंट, but self honesty and integrity in terms of your duty is more important, because आपका पर्सनल है और वो करने से आपने लोगों को फर्क देना है। मैंने उनकी एक बात मुझे याद आ गई कि at one place somebody had gone to see him and when he was walking out उन्होंने अंदर की लाइटें बंद कर दी क्योंकि बाहर आ रहे थे। तो उन्होंने कहा आपने लाइटें क्यों बंद कर दी? कहने इसलिए कि बिजली का बिल आता है, फिजूल में क्यों जाया करें। तो कहने ये तो गवर्नमेंट का इरादा है। कहते हैं ऑल द मोर रीजन, मेरा अपना घर होता तो शायद मैं जल्दी रहने देता। ऑल द मोर रीजन दैट आई शुड पुट इट ऑफ बिकॉज़ गवर्नमेंट के पैसे फ्री के नहीं है भाई। सही ये कौन कहेगा आज के जमाने में यार? दिस वाज हिम, आई एम टेलिंग यू कांट फाइंड अ मैन लाइक हिम एवर।
दैट्स ट्रू, वेरी ट्रू।
मेरे पास तो इतना है नियाज भाई, बिलीव मी, आई विश टू गॉड हमारे बच्चे ये समझ लें कि ये बहुत जरूरी चीज है जिन्ना साहब को समझना पड़ता और वो फॉलो। ये मौलवी शोली की बात, मैंने मौलवी की बात की है ना थोड़ी सी, कि वो किसी ने पूछा उनसे कि जी आप विच सेक्ट ऑफ द मुस्लिम्स यू बिलोंग टू, फट उन्होंने कहना कि आई बिलोंग टू द सेम सेक्ट ऑफ द प्रॉफिट। ठीक है, और कुरान पढ़ लो, उसमें लिखा है फिरकेबाजी फितना। तो फितना तो नहीं थे हमारे यहाँ, फिरके ही बने रहते हैं। और मैंने बताया ना कि कुछ फिरके ऐसे हैं जो इंडिया में बने। There was no such thing as देवबंदीज एंड बरेलवीज एटसेट्रा।
अच्छा, आपको बता रहे थे कायद-ए-आज़म की एक एकेडमी है या कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो वो प्रमोट करती है? कराची में कहाँ पर है?
कराची में बाजार के बिल्कुल सामने, क्रॉस द रोड।
और वो वहाँ पे अभी एक्टिवली कुछ कर रहे हैं
वहाँ पे? मतलब ये कि देखो ना, वही वाली बात है,
गवर्नमेंट की
ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम सिर्फ ये कि अब तो आपको पोस्ट चाहिए होती है ना, काम करें ना करें। सही, ठीक है ना। तो जब वो फिल्म बनी थी, आई वुड अर्ज यू पीपल टू प्लीज ब्रिंग दैट फिल्म, इट्स अ गुड फिल्म। जिन्ना के ऊपर जो फिल्म बनी है, जो मेरे ख्याल में वो एम्बेसडर के साहब उन्होंने बनाई थी, जिसमें दिस चैप हु एक्ट्स एज द ड्रैकुला, क्या नाम है उसका, क्रिस्टोफर ली, ही हैज एक्टेड एज जिन्ना, एंड क्रिस्टोफर ली इज ऑन रिकॉर्ड सेइंग when somebody asked him that, "Itni picture, you've made so many movies, which one have you enjoyed the most?" And he straight away said, "It was really, I mean, I felt so honored to have played Mr. Jinnah."
ये ना क्रिस्टोफर ली की किताब है.
Right. So he has actually said this on TV. It's a hard talk that मैंने खुद सुना हुआ. ठीक है? It was an honor. आप अगर इस फिल्म को देखेंगे उसमें एक चीज और आपको नजर आएगी. After his death, उन्होंने एक सीन दिखाया है कि वो जन्नत में जा रहे हैं और पर्सन इन चार्ज ओवर देयर, फरिश्ता हो या जो भी हो, वो है शशि कपूर. He's a Hindu, right? And when somebody says that Jinnah Sahab is here, he gets up from his seat. Jinnah Sahab hai. You know, the feeling that he said, "Oh, he was a great man." I must, so, welcome him myself.
Yeah.
तो ये छोटी छोटी बातें नहीं है बेटा, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है. We need to understand this. हमें अपने फर्क पड़ता है. I keep telling people that your job in the world is to look after others. And if you really do that, just remember that you are the other for somebody else also.
Absolutely.
आपका भी काम है.
बिल्कुल
आप दूसरों के बारे में सोचो, आप उसके लिए दूसरे ही हो, वो आपके बारे में सोचेगा. This is how it should be. हमारे यहाँ तो जिस दिन से रसूलुल्लाह ने आग बंद किया है, हमने लड़ाई झगड़ा शुरू कर दिया.
So one last thing, कायद-ए-आज़म के बारे में ये आजकल बहुत सारी इंफॉर्मेशन व्हाट्सएप के थ्रू आती है. तो मैंने कहीं पढ़ा है कि किसी ने भेजा कि कायद-ए-आज़म was sleeping in London somewhere and he saw उनको ज़लज़ला तरह कोई earthquake type चीज हुई, and then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came in his dreams and he
This
said,
also I have read. In fact, not
I don't know
only-
whether
I-
authenticity क्या है.
मैं आपको ये बता सकता हूँ, there is a person, American, आप उसको Facebook पे जाके, Google पे जाके, you can Google him. His name is Alan Kiesler. Now, Alan Kiesler is an American. He's a doctorate, PhD की हुई है. He teaches in Berkeley University in San Francisco. So he is a big shot. So I used to just see a lot of his quotes coming up. पाकिस्तान को बहुत प्रेस करते थे. I asked him a question. You praise Pakistan so much. Have you ever been here? And his reply was initially, ha ha. And then said many times, I am a regular visitor. So I was excited and I wrote to him that when are you visiting next? So he gave me a time around 4-5 महीने के बाद. He said, I'm coming. So I gave him my number and I said, hey, please, when you are here, give me a call. I would like to meet you. So he thanked me. So after about 4 or 5 months, he called me. And initially from Islamabad, then said, I'll be in Karachi in 2 weeks' time, 2 days' time. And he came to Karachi and he called me from Karachi. And I said, where are you? I'll come and pick you up. So I thought he was going to give me some hotel name. He gave me a place somewhere near Jama Cloth Market. So I didn't argue with him. I just went there. And right in front of Jama Cloth Market, I stood and I called him up and I said, I'm standing here, where should I come? So he says, you just stay there, I'm coming. So he came over and here is the man walking, Gora, Shalwar Kameez, Peshawari Chapal. So we shook hands and I brought him to Defense Club to sit down and talk and have tea, etc. So when I asked him about himself, so he was born in 1941 or 42 in Khanewal. His father was a priest in one of the churches over there. And he told me that during the partition, they had gone, because it was summertime, to Shimla for the resort type of a thing. And it took them a lot of time coming back. And then they moved to Lahore and he used to stay. He said he stayed in Raiwind. And Raiwind at that time was not what it is today. But that's where he stayed. So he could speak Urdu and he could speak Punjabi.
अच्छा.
12 साल की उम्र तक तो यहाँ रहे ना, शुरू की. So then, I don't know how many of you heard about Rashidabad. So I told him that there is one place in Pakistan which is unique and there is no such place in the world. He said, what is it? I said, if I tell you about it, you will not understand unless you see it. So he said, I have to see it. I said, okay. So I called up Shabir Saab and I told him that this is what I want to do. I want to take this man, this American with me. How do I go about it? Tell me. So he said, don't worry. we'll go together. I'm here in Karachi. I'm going tomorrow on Daigu because the roads are not well. So it's okay if you can go on Daigu. So I asked the guy, can you go on a Daigu? He said, what's a Daigu? I told him it's a bus, air conditioning and so on. So Shabir bought our tickets and we ended up at Student Biryani, which is the stop of this thing, Daigu. And on the way, he again asked me, okay, tell me something. I said, okay. You know, some good persons all over the world may, you know, out of goodwill, open a small clinic or a small school. If he has more money, he may open a hospital or he may open a university or a college. But in one place, so many things, not possible.
लेकिन वो हम बात कर रहे थे कि वो ख्वाब जो है
हाँ, उन्होंने मुझे ये ख्वाब बताया था. This he told me
अच्छा
first.
ठीक है.
And he said he heard this from his father, who was told this by, I think, वो नुमानी साहब थे ना जिन्होंने जनाजा पढ़ाया था. And lot of people didn't want to. मौलवी तो वैसे ही उनके खिलाफ उठे थे. तो उनसे जब पूछा गया आपने क्यों पढ़ाया, तो फिर उन्होंने कहा कि मुझे जिन्ना साहब ने एक बात बताई थी, क्योंकि मैंने उनसे पूछा था कि आप पाकिस्तान वापस क्यों आए? You were having fun over there. So he said, I'll tell you if you don't tell anybody till I'm alive.
Quaid-e-Azam ने कहा कि नहीं बताना है.
So then he told him this, that he was sleeping in his Stanford, whatever, this flat, and he felt shaking of his bed. He thought there's an earthquake, but when he gets up, he doesn't find any more shaking. Then he just felt it. So he went back to sleep. This is how he's narrated to me. And as soon as he slept again it was shaking, and this time he gets up and he says, what the hell is going on? And yet he sees no feet running, you know, people want to evacuate or something. And then he sees somebody so handsome in front of him in white clothes. And he looks at him and he says, who are you? And in English he replied, I am Prophet Muhammad. I want you to go back and do what you're doing. So this is Numani Sahab's version. I mean, obviously there is no Qaid's proof on it.
Anything written on this thing by
किसी ने लिखा नहीं है. ये narration रही है, ये TV पे भी आ चुका है.
Yeah.
But obviously, one can refute it, one cannot refute it. The fact is, he came back.
Yes,
and did this. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much, Capt Hadi, and all the participants, and inshallah those who will be listening and benefiting from the vast knowledge and something that we all need to know, learn, and of course implement things that were taught, that were told to us. And I think this is the time all of us need to put our heads together and work together to make Pakistan richer, bigger, stronger.
It's the greatest
inshallah.
place, believe me. The greatest place. We don't realize it. कोई चीज ऐसी नहीं है जो यहाँ पे नहीं. Resources, talent, everything.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So thank you very much, everybody, and it's time to call it off. And hope to this video link would be available, inshallah. You can touch base with me, those who want it, in a couple of days. So iski rendering वगैरह होके then YouTube पे जाएगी, inshallah, and it should be available. Link iska to everybody who wants to listen. Thank you very much, and Allah Hafiz again. Ya Allah.